One thing that we've realized over the years doing creative services is that as soon as you stop working, you stop making money. And everything is opportunity based. So you have to win client after client and after client. But if one day you're like, I'm kind of tired, I'm going to stop, you stop making money. That sucks. That really sucks. And I realized that a couple of years ago. It's like, why am I working so hard for this dollar? And it's going to disappear as soon as we don't win a pitch or, we stop working. So I think it's very important to diversify where you might be getting income from.
Hey Hatchlings, welcome to the Motion Hatch podcast. I'm your host, Hayley Akins. Hey Hatchlings, thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of the podcast. I really appreciate it. This is episode 34, and it's also part 4 of this mini-series that we're doing called Making Money in Mograph, where I'm interviewing different people from the industry who make money in different ways. It might be through an unusual job role, or they might be diversifying their revenue streams or making some passive income. So on this week's episode, I brought on Matthew Encina. He is the Chief Content Officer at The Future and also Creative Director for Blind. And he basically makes all the content for The Future and he oversees all that. So it was great to talk to him about content marketing and what he does, and also about how we as motion designers can make content for our businesses and how that can make us be seen as more of an expert in the industry and get more clients and maybe generate some passive income from it one day. We also spoke a bit about Instagram and how to build an audience over there and how you can get started with Instagram stories. So it was really, really great. I know you're going to love it. Hey, Matthew, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Hayley, thanks for having me.
So you're the Chief Content Officer at The Future and the Creative Director for Blind. It seems like you're doing a lot of stuff. Do you want to tell us about your background and what you do?
Sure. I've been a creative professional now for 15 years. I started off as a print designer. Then I went to Art Center, got exposed to motion design. And that was at the height of, the TV commercial space where advertising utilized a lot of motion graphics. So that was around 2006, 2007. And I was just at the boom of that. So for a couple of years, I was freelancing. I started my own business. Then the market crashed. I had to close my business, go back to freelancing, and then I went staff over at Blind. And for the past almost a decade now, I've been working with Chris over at Blind, and more recently now at our second company, The Future, which is finally starting to build some steam. And the difference between Blind and The Future, Blind is a creative services company. So we help clients with their branding, their strategy, and obviously motion design work. While on The Future, we focus on teaching creatives what we know. And we do that through content, through courses, through kits. And that's just been so incredible for me, for us as a group, to make that transition, to turn the lens on us, share everything that we know, and feel like we're making a big impact in the world as opposed to just serving one client at a time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So can you tell us what a Chief Content Officer does then?
It's just a fancy title so people will talk to me, to be honest. But my current role is really overseeing all of the content on our platform. So our YouTube channel, our Facebook, our Instagram, a little bit of our email, essentially anything that goes out and is used to bring people into our ecosystem. So I basically lead a team of a couple of editors and designers, and I focus on making sure that the content hits all of our marks in terms of, will you learn something? Is it actionable? Is there a result that you get from there? So I just make sure from a high level that all of our content is up to snuff and reaching our benchmarks in terms of what we want to put out there. On the other side, I'm also trying to negotiate sponsorships and basically help get some money behind the channel. There are tons of tools and software that we already use. So it just makes total sense that we try and partner up with those same companies to sponsor the content because we use it already. We love them. So for me, I'm also on that side where I'm trying to get some money behind the things that we already love using and the content that we love making.
Yeah, that's cool. So do you want to tell us what content marketing is and why we should care about it as motion designers and how we can use it in our businesses?
Absolutely. And I'll tell a little story first. I think back in the day when Chris had just started The Future, he told me that, "Hey, Matthew, you need to be on the channel." I think this was back in 2014. And I said, are you crazy, Chris? Like, what are you talking about? I'm not you. I'm not an educator. I'm not a teacher. I don't know what I'd even talk about. And then he said to me, "No, Matthew, you don't realize it, but what you do is special. There's a reason I hired you. What you do every day is special. You just haven't had the time or presence to just turn around and look at yourself and realize all the time and effort you've put into the craft that you've done, into the profession that you've been invested in. You've put in a lot of time and effort, and the things you do are very special. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here." So I took that to heart, and I made my first video for the channel. I recorded it probably 10 or 20 times because I was paralyzed by perfection. It's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the first thing that people hear from me. I want myself to sound intelligent. I want to make sure I'm delivering good value and that they don't think that I'm just some goof, right? I have all this imposter syndrome built up. Like, I'm not a YouTube guy, I'm not an educator. I can't put myself out there like this. But after that first one, I saw that the video was tracking pretty well, got some really good feedback on there, and that helped push me to the next one. And I think the next video was still many months later, but that cadence slowly picked up. And now, we're producing content and releasing almost on a daily basis. So that was a few years ago. 3 years later, now I'm Chief Content Officer. So why it's important is that we've realized in retrospect now, looking back, that a lot of our clients in the past few years have come to us through the channel. A good portion of our clients these days have hit us up and said, I don't want to say this at first, but I'm a huge fan of the channel. I like what you guys were saying. It made total sense to me, and it just made sense for us to hire you. So the reason why I feel like content is important is to establish yourself as an expert in the industry. And this is something that we learned from reading the book Win Without Pitching Manifesto from Blair Enns. There's a whole chapter there about developing expertise. And yes, there's so many people in our community that are amazing at what they do, but they only have a reel to show for it. There's one piece of content that's out there that may or may not attract the eyeballs and audience that they need. So for us, why content is important is because we have so many videos out there, so many blog articles, kits, and just web pages in general. There's so much traffic pointed our way. So when somebody looks up brand strategy or branding or motion design, our names, our links are going to pop up at the top of Google search, on top of YouTube, basically where somebody might be looking. So we have put ourselves in front of these people just because we have put so much content out there. We're sharing what we know, and we've developed a community around what we do. So our general community feels like we're experts at what they do. They love our transparency and what we share. But even clients who typically come from in-house design teams are watching our channel as well. So they watch our channel and then they push it to their higher ups and say, hey, we should hire these guys over at Blind in the future. So I think content marketing is very, very important just to develop your expertise and just to get your name in front of people, because people love to work with and hire people that they know. And if there's no evidence of you doing any amazing work out there or being a thought leader in your space, it's really hard for them to develop that trust in you.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Do you think that there's, say, if you're a motion designer and you just do freelance stuff and you kind of want to dip your toe in and like see how that could work for you, what kind of things do you think that we should be thinking about as motion designers? And like, would you say maybe start putting a bit more of yourself on your Instagram and things like that? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I would start bite size. Just like Chris was telling me a few years ago, just turn the camera around on yourself and hit record, because what you do is special. And I truly believe that. So with all the talent that's out there, my recommendation is to start small. Try not to start so big, because a lot of people have big ambitions like, okay, I get it. Content marketing is important. I'm going to start my YouTube channel, my blog, all this stuff. And then it just becomes this big daunting task where it's like, shoot, they're just looking at a blank screen or blank page and they don't know where to start. So one thing that I found very effective is just to start and start small. So what I've been doing over the past year or two to ramp up my own cadence in the content that I put out there, I'll just put up my phone, maybe when I'm driving or commuting, I'll hit record and I'll just try and teach one thing. Whatever's on the top of my mind, whatever I'm thinking of that week or something that I might have learned, I just try and focus on one thing. This was a couple of months ago, or actually a year ago. One of my Instagram friends had sent me a question and he said, "How do you reach out to clients?" And I gave him an answer and I was like, "Oh, that's actually pretty good." So what I did is I just turned on my phone, and this was just for Instagram, and I recorded all the steps that I told him and I put it a few examples and I released that just as Instagram content. So it was just maybe 5 quick videos. Those were all 15 seconds each, very, very low bar. And because it's on that platform that disappears, I didn't feel like it's going to be forever, right? That was just me testing. So I put that out there. It got such a good response that I decided, you know what, I'm going to make that a talk or a piece of content. So I went to our pro group where we have a small member of future pro members, and I did a little presentation for them on how I reached out, and I went pretty deep. I cut that down and then made that a piece of content on the channel. And I think that's called How to Network Online. So that all started with just dipping my toe into answering a question. It was already top of mind, and I wanted to capture that momentum, all those thoughts, those good things that I already had, and just turn on the phone and started recording.
Yes, I think that's really great. But if people don't know what they kind of want to teach, or they
Mhm.
want to speak more to their clients rather than kind of other motion designers, I guess,
Mhm. Mhm.
what would you recommend from that point of view?
See, I think that's also a challenge. A lot of people have brought this up too, where it's like, okay, I could develop a community around me, but are any of them paying clients? And you don't really know. The whole point is that you just have to start developing the expertise so that for us, if I started a piece of content and said, like, well, here's how you pitch for a motion graphics TV commercial, right? So I have some content out there for that. I also developed the product around that. And that just drove a lot of eyeballs for me being the pitch guy over at the future or at Blind. So I've talked a lot to a lot of potential clients because of that content. So you never know. Of course, a bulk of the people watching are people who just want to learn. And I don't think that you have to clearly define and filter those two people out separately. I think the key is just to start and warm up to the idea, and then you'll develop your expertise around it. So let me rewind and talk about Chris as an example. The first season of The Future, which was previously known as The School, they were just sharing what they know. They were talking about brand strategy. Those videos now are 4 or 5 years old, and people, potential clients, hit us up for those things. Our goal was not really to sell that to clients at all. That was not the goal. What we did is we unpacked case studies in there and they talked about the process. And that was mostly just to educate a lot of people about what we do behind closed doors. As a result of that, several clients have watched those videos. Like I said, the in house design team or somebody there, and they have brought us on as a vendor for them to help them out with their internal challenges because they love learning the process so much and they realize the power of design and what we do. So I don't think that you should try and filter out ahead of time who the audience is and what exactly they want. What I would do is just focus on yourself, what makes you unique. What are things that you've spent time and money to learn? Look at those things and can you teach that to somebody else? Because part of that teaching process is where you master your craft. What I've found over the years is that as motion designers or creatives in general, we do stuff inherently. We kind of do it by second nature. We just, somebody tells us to animate something, we just go click, 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 oh, done. Until somebody asks you, how did you do that? You haven't really mastered that process. I remember when I first was a creative director at Blind, I had to train our interns and design staff. And when I first started, I told them, oh, hey, I need some boards for this thing. They would make it. At the end of the day, I looked at it, it's like, oh, this is not what I wanted. And I wasn't a good communicator. And I didn't know how to tell them what I wanted. So instead of me teaching them, I spent a lot of time after hours fixing their frames so that I could get this stuff out. Over time, I realized that is a waste of my time. Like, why am I doing double the work? I need to become a better communicator. So I really broke down my steps and understood what are the steps that I take to make this result that I'm asking them to do? So I break that down just like a recipe, right? You show the result of the recipe, and here are the 5 steps that you need to do to achieve that thing. So I started looking inward, and this was at the same time that Chris was challenging me to be more on the channel. So I flipped the lens around on myself, on my own process, and I was able to teach that to our interns, to our design staff. And I felt like I mastered those things so that the next time somebody asked me, "Oh, how did you design this frame?" I could tell them in 30 seconds all the steps that I took. And that's a very long answer to how do you get started and how do you focus on the audience, the right audience. I don't think it's about determining and filtering the paying clients first. It's just about understanding what value you have and putting that out there, see what resonates, and just start building up that catalog of things. Even if it's just 15 seconds Instagram stories, just test it out because you never know. People will resonate with things that that you take for granted, that you don't even find special.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I think that a lot of people listening to this will be like, but why would someone care about what I have to say? Or there's so many other motion designers who are so much more talented than I am. Like, what would you say to those people?
How long have you invested in your career? Why did you sign up for the Grayscale Gorilla course or the School of Motion course? Why are you going to the iDesign tutorials on YouTube? It's because they just put themselves out there. They've spent a lot of time themselves, like Nick and EJ. All these guys have spent a lot of time in their careers investing in learning and making stuff for clients. As everybody that's listening to it has done the same thing. They've spent a lot of time and money. So why did you turn to those people to learn that thing? That means you have advanced in your career, right? You've stepped up the ladders because you have more knowledge than you did yesterday before you discovered those people, before you went to school, before you paid money. So now you're a couple steps ahead of the person behind you. So everybody that is at step one, they will value what you have to say.
Yeah, I think that's true. And also, I always think it's, you might think, oh, someone else has talked about this loads, blah, blah, blah. But it's a lot about personality as well. Like some people gravitate towards different people in the industry and things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, there's tons and tons of content out there. Everything's already been said, right? Originality doesn't exist. Let's get that out of the way. Everything's already been said, everything's been taught, and everybody's just recycling the same information over and over and over again. But that's okay because you won't listen to everybody. Like, for instance, Gary Vee is somebody who's very big on YouTube, right? If you look at his audience, it's male dominant. And all he says is a couple of things: hustle, work, and grind it out, right? Or whatever those things are, right? Go to a garage sale, sell. Like, he has like 4 things that he says all the time, but his audience loves that, right? His Vayner Nation, they love that. But as you can see from his demographic, there's a big portion of females that just don't watch his stuff because they don't resonate with what he's saying. Right. So there are plenty of other female entrepreneurs, other examples where you look at different types of people and you resonate with those people. If you read the book .com Secrets by Russell Brunson, he talks about this extensively, about the idea of an attractive character. So with any marketing and branding, there is an attractive character that you as an audience member will resonate with. Right. If we look at one example from the book is Subway. Subway, for the longest time, they were just a fast food sandwich shop. That's all they were known for. And then they found Jerry. Jerry, I know he's not in the limelight now, but back in the day when they found him, he lost a ton of weight. And all of a sudden, this fast food chain become a diet chain. And people resonated with his story. It's like this guy who just eats sandwiches and was calorie counting, lost 400 pounds or something crazy like that. So he was an attractive character for Subway. And that's why people gravitated towards that as a diet brand now, right? So that's a long way to say that people are looking for different things. They need to hear it from certain people for it to resonate for them. So I would recommend for all of your audience to look at yourself. What makes you unique? What culture did you grow up in? What location did you grow up in? What education did you have? What have you done for work? All of your life experiences add up and become this very interesting filter of who you are. And every story or bit of information that you tell is going to be through your unique lens that somebody's going to resonate with. So I could be saying the same thing that Chris Do says, but a lot of people will resonate more with me because of the way that I deliver it or my background or my culture. Right? I have a huge Filipino community that follows me and are just like, they're all about what I say. And I'm just regurgitating the stuff that Chris teaches me, but they love hearing it from me because they can see themselves in me. So it's really important to embrace who you are, not trying to become vanilla and not trying to find something new to say because everything's already been said. Just share it the way that you want to say it or that you see it because your POV is the thing that's very important.
If you were excited because you learned a new thing, right? Even if it's like in After Effects or wherever, then you might want to share that with other people. And then other people will probably be like, oh, yeah, I didn't know that. Like, even if you think everyone does, like, I've been using After Effects for the longest time and I still discover things every day. So,
Right, because everybody understands the tool and then breaks it and use it in a way that it wasn't meant to be used, right? Like I think there's this whole community of 2D character animators that have blown up using After Effects, but I don't think that that was what it was intentionally made for at all, right? It was made for visual effects and some compositing and a little bit of animation, but the way that people have broken the tool or created plugins for it, now it's this very robust character animation suite and Adobe has built on top of that. So there are plenty of ways that people are using the tools or the information they're given in very unique ways. I'll give you another example. Handley Eugene, amazing motion designer. I follow him on Instagram, and every so often he will post Instagram stories of how he's using Cinema 4D or After Effects. And I look at it, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you built that in 3D. He had this animation, it was an owl, and it looked very 2D just because of the way that it was rendered. And then he did a behind the scenes showing his rig, and it was all 3D in Cinema 4D. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But it makes sense because the tool allows for him to do very unique things. It's just the way that he did it made it look like it was a 2D animation. So I think there's so much to learn. There's so many people who use the tools in unique ways. And you as the audience, I would not discount how you use the tools or how you do something in your way, because that could be very, very valuable or unique to somebody else.
yeah, definitely. I saw that you posted on Instagram recently asking your audience on your personal Instagram, like were they here for your work or like the things that you taught? Do you
Mhm.
want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So, Instagram's an interesting thing because each platform I have to treat very differently. And I think that's one thing that I've learned over the years where back in the day, I thought that you just have to be very active on all the different social accounts. So when we would do our marketing for Blind or the future, we would take one piece of content and blast it everywhere. That was the wrong way because each platform is different, the audience is different, the platforms reward different things. So Instagram is one thing that I know it's a developing community. There's a lot of motion designers on there, lots of visual people, and it's a visual platform. So people like seeing pretty things. So the reason why I put that question out there is because I feel like I have more thoughts than I have time to make stuff. And it's like I want to put more thoughts out there. I'm just trying to figure out how I might share those thoughts because those usually make more sense as a YouTube video or as a blog post, which I like doing. But at the same time, it's like I feel like I need to develop this community on Instagram. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that. And if you'll see from my last couple of posts, which are ancient now, each of those posts, instead of just saying, here's a beautiful image and that's it, like or comment, I try to put a story in there. In each of the posts, I'm trying to treat it like a blog. So I'm trying to share a lot of my thoughts or the process behind something or just trying to share what's going on in here rather than just the final result. So the reason why I put that poll out there is like I'm trying to figure out ways to just put more thoughts out there because I know it's valuable to people and I want to utilize that platform. I just haven't quite figured out the formula. Some people they like to post photos of themselves and then a blog post, photo, blog post. But for me, I'm still trying to figure that out and I'm a little hesitant. So I'm haven't quite figured that out for myself yet.
I totally understand because you feel like you're trying to, make something that's really nice, but
Mhm.
you obviously teaching a lot, so you want to teach too. But then you're like, well, I can't make like something beautiful for every single post, and then that has like a great lesson with it as well, and then post something like every day. Like that's just insane. So it's tricky.
It's very crazy, but that's why for the most part that platform I use mostly for stories. Right. So I will be pretty frequent during the week on stories, trying to share what I know or push to something that I find interesting. And my feed, that's just where it's a lot more sparse. And I think a lot of people treat it that way. It's very forgiving to do an Instagram story because you could delete it. It's very forgivable because people see it and they know you're just recording on your phone. They don't expect high production value or high quality from there. All they're doing is trying to get behind the scenes of somebody's life or some insight that somebody wants to share quickly. So that's what they're looking for there. And that's how I've embraced that platform. But I do need to figure out how to use the feed a bit better.
Yeah, and I think like it was what we were saying earlier, I found where you kind of I recommend to motion designers to use the feed as like that's where you post your work, right? Like bits of your work and then like actually use stories and use them to maybe share a bit more of your personality and
Mhm.
things like that because then people are going to be like, "Oh, you're not just like a faceless,
Right.
you know, pretty work. Like you're actually there making stuff and like
Right.
the behind the scenes stuff is always really awesome and really popular too."
Absolutely. And I find that the people who are most vulnerable, the most open about sharing their story, their process, those are the most relatable people. And I can get on board with that. Yeah, there's tons of people who make prolific, amazing work. There's thousands of designers like that on there. And a lot of them look the same. But the ones that I follow and the ones that I engage with the most are the ones that have unique stories or are very friendly and very sociable. And those are the people that I remember as opposed to one of the thousands that have made another every day, right? It's like there's so many cool people out there. And I think if people were just more vulnerable and open about who they are, they might develop a stronger connection to the community around them and the people that resonate with them.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's true. So, because this is going to be part of the Making Money in Mograph series,
Mhm.
I wanted to talk a bit about how content can maybe turn into generating some passive income for people and what your experience with that is, and how feasible you think for kind of freelance motion designers to make money from that aspect of things is.
Yeah, absolutely. We could look at it from two places, right? Because there's stuff I make for the future, and then there's stuff that I make for myself on my personal time. So let's talk about the future real quick. Because I've been a creative director for about a decade now, there's things that we do all the time. And this is part of Chris telling me to put the lens back on myself and observe all the things that I do. So my first flagship product that I launched on the future was called the Pitch Kit. And the pitch kit is the process that I take when clients come to us and they want us to pitch an idea to win the work. So when I first started as a creative director, I didn't really have a process. My process was make the most beautiful work, make as much as possible, show that to the client and get them excited and on board. The problem was that was a shotgun approach. I was guessing in the dark and I really didn't have a good process. And I was only winning about 1 in 4 opportunities. So of the millions of dollars that was coming as an opportunity to our table, I was losing a significant amount of that. That's when Chris had to stop. It's like, hey guys, what's going on here? Like what's your process? And I couldn't really explain that to him. So he took the time, he stopped. He's like, you know what? I haven't done my good job of making sure that you guys are well educated in this process. He taught us his process, how he asks questions, how he deals with clients. He brought in some coaches to help us, which was Kier McLaren, to really kick our butts, to just get our mentality straight and focus on the calls right. And then he brought in some professors to help us understand psychology. I read a bunch of books about buyer psychology, about persuasion, things like that. And all of that came together as our pitch process. So we were already doing that for many years. My win rate went up to win 3 in 4 opportunities. So it became very, very high. It flipped. So now I was making a lot more money for the company and I felt really good. It's like, now I've mastered this thing. So years later, once we got moving on the future, then I realized, shoot, this is a product right here. Let me take all of those steps because it's a very clear process of the questions that I ask, the process in creating the style frames, the mood boards, the pitch deck that would go out to clients, and how I frame those conversations so that it would be valuable to the client. The problem I was doing before is I was just showing them pretty work without good context, without understanding what it is that they want. What the pitch kit does and the process that we develop is understanding exactly what the client wants first before you make a single thing so that you're maximizing your efforts and you're not wasting time guessing what they want. So that was a big flagship product for me. It was just something that we had already been doing. And I realized I had great success from that. And I thought, you know what? I should share that with other people. Let me write about it. Let me document that. And let me put that out there in a way that somebody else might understand this process.
When was the last time a client paid you late or you wanted to charge for project files but didn't know how? Most of the issues we face in our businesses as motion designers can be solved with good communication. The best way to communicate your terms upfront to the client and ensure your project runs smoothly is to have a solid contract in place. In talking to motion designers, I know that most are either not using a contract at all or have cobbled together one from various online sources. I get it. Lawyers can be expensive and you just want to get on with what you do best, which is making great work. That's exactly why I created the Freelance Contract Bundle. Designed in collaboration with lawyers from both the UK and the US, the Freelance Contract Bundle is a set of downloadable contract templates made specially for motion designers and animators. It includes a commission contract and a freelance terms of service contract, helping you create smoother relationships both direct to client and also while working with agencies and studios. To find out how the Freelance Contract Bundle can help protect your business, your work, and ensure your projects run smoothly, go to motionhatch.com/contract. Now let's get back to the episode. I think the question that probably most people have is like, when you're putting stuff out there, obviously you want to build like a bit of an audience first. And like, how do you decide like what would be good as a product and what is just going to be sort of a YouTube video, or like the product's kind of more of a deep dive into things that you guys talk about?
Right. I think there's a couple of ways to approach that, right? One way is to first just start putting out the content out there. Don't hold anything back. One thing that Chris has taught me, and I'm so thankful that I've been exposed to this, is like, there's no secrets in the industry. I don't know why so many people hold cards so close to their chest where they don't want to reveal how they made something or how much money they're making, all that stuff. It's like, why is that a secret? I don't understand. So he's been one person, because he's an educator, because he was my instructor actually at Art Center. He's like, just put it out there, just teach everything that you know, because once somebody finds value, they're gonna become a fan, they're gonna become an audience, they're gonna be hooked on to what it is that you're saying. So first put that out there, because you want to develop your expertise in the field and you can start building an audience that way. Once you realize of the things that you're talking about, what seems to be trending well, what's getting the most engagement, most likes, most views, then maybe you can consider going deeper and deeper on those things. Make another episode, make another blog post of that. If it continues to have the same engagement, then you know you have a product to potentially develop. So before you go off and develop and spend all this time making a course or a kit or whatever you want to do, I suggest pre-selling it first. And we've been doing this more and more recently, where we have an idea for a thing. So the way we approach it is, what are we trying to have as a result for somebody else, right? We need to give somebody a tangible result. And we look at everything as a recipe. So if this is the result and here's where they are, what are the 5 steps that they need to take to accomplish this result? What are the lessons they need to learn? What are the actions they need to take to accomplish little small results to get that thing? That becomes an outline, which eventually becomes a sales page, right? That could be a Kickstarter or a sales page that you just throw up, and you pre-sell it before you make anything. So you just have the idea of what it is and what the big promise is before you make anything, before you spend the months and months creating it. I know a lot of people in the past, like Joey, like he just took time off and just developed this because he was already an instructor. He already saw the trends in the classroom and he just went for it. I think our previous approach, we've done that as well. But what I've seen to be more helpful for us is to pre-sell it, because a lot of people will say, if you put a survey out, would you like this type of product? They're going to say, yes, absolutely, sign me up. But they're not putting their money where their mouth is. And we realize that when it's time to sell, nobody buys it. And that's terrible, because you feel horrible. It's like, oh, nobody liked my stuff. Boo-hoo. Man, I suck. But if you pre-sell it, if you build up all this momentum through your content and then throw up a page and say, you know what, I'm considering selling this course or kit or tool, and it's going to do this for you. Here are the results and here are the steps that we're going to cover. If you're interested, consider buying this. And if I get to this amount, I will release this and make this for you. And obviously, because they're buying early, they have a huge discount because they're trusting you and investing in you. So pre-selling, I think, is a good way to test your idea just by building an outline and pulling together your thoughts based off of your experiences to see if people are actually serious about buying this thing.
Do you think that in the future, more motion designers and people in our industry are going to be teaching more and kind of diversifying their incomes, like using content and audiences and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so, because I think one thing that we've realized over the years doing creative services is that as soon as you stop working, you stop making money. And everything is opportunity based. So you have to win client after client and after client. But if one day you're like, you know what, I'm kind of tired, I'm going to stop, you stop making money. And I think that sucks. That really sucks. And I realized that a couple of years ago. It's like, why am I working so hard for this dollar and it's going to disappear as soon as we don't win a pitch or, we stop working. So I think it's very important to diversify where you might be getting income from. So some of it could be passive, some of it could be this opportunity-based stuff, some of it could be consulting, which I do all of these things. We do client work. I sell products on the future. And then I have little affiliate deals that are going on. So in my personal life, where I'm making a little bit of funds is on my personal YouTube channel. I released a video about redesigning my home office. And that thing blew up. I think that's like 400,000 views in a week, something ridiculous like that. It's like, oh my gosh, like that's not even my expertise. I'm a motion guy, I'm a designer. Like, why is this blowing up? It's just because I took my skills in filmmaking and storytelling and applied it to a space where there was nothing else like that in the market, I believe. And as a result of that, now I'm making some Google AdSense revenue on that. It's a small amount, but I also have affiliate links to all the products in there because I made a blog post and it links to all the stuff. So I think from that video, it returned a few $100s on that. I know it's not much, but that's going to be reoccurring. The more and more people watch that, the more and more people click those links. I'm going to collect pennies here and there, but that all adds up. So I have the same thing with like my Amazon book list and products that I like using. So these things, even though it might seem small at first, they will add up. Because I remember when I first started my Amazon affiliate, the first month I made $1.21. And I was like, woohoo, I made something. Like somebody bought a book from my link. And now, I think it's around like 300 something dollars a month, which is still not a whole lot. But over time, the more and more content I put out there to drive there, I know that's going to grow. And then obviously, there's still client work if I want big one-off wins. There's the products that I'm selling on the future. There's sponsorship deals that we could do and consulting. Like I sell my time as a consultant. So people usually hire me to help them with their career, with creative direction, what they might be doing for a business or a pitch. And they hire me by the hour. So these are all different places that I'm personally getting revenue from. And it feels good because if one thing fails, there's still other things that will help support my life and my lifestyle. So one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is with Blind in the future, this year in 2019, we have done 0 client work. And it's just come to that point by the end of 2018 that the future has had such exponential growth that it didn't make any sense for us to continue doing these big client jobs. Because the more time we spend on the client jobs, the less we're investing on growing the things that are long lasting and things that are predictable. With the future, the revenue that's coming in through all of the different streams, it's predictable. We could see that growing every single month. And we know that's reoccurring. And all of our content, all the stuff that we've made from before continues to build up to today. Versus all the client work, it's like, cool, it's on our portfolio, but that's not making us any more money, really. We still have to go out, sell the work, try and get clients. Like it's pretty rough to do the service stuff. But it was very fun for a very long time. And now my hope is that we don't really have to do any of that anymore.
Yeah. So I think from like the people who are going to be listening to this probably would, I imagine, be quite interested in the affiliate stuff because a lot of people in our industry haven't necessarily heard a lot about that. And I think also it's a way that if you develop a bit of an audience, that you can get money back from it without getting people to buy your stuff, right? Which I guess
Right.
from like some people listening, they might be like, oh, that's too scary, to try and like sell. Whereas like I think affiliate marketing and things like that is kind of like an easy way into start making some passive income on the side that could help you like pay a little bit towards your rent or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not going to be a whole lot. Affiliate marketing is it's very small, but the more you do it and the more relationships you have out there, the more those things are going to add up. So I wouldn't, yes, that's an easy way to start, but I don't think that people should stop there. But I think definitely people should start because that's just an easy way to capture money because you already have an audience around you. And I see so many people on Instagram doing this where they're pushing to Skillshare. Try 2 months of Skillshare for free because when somebody signs up through there, they get a pretty decent little piece of change, right? They get part of their monthly or yearly contract. But if assuming like 100 people signed up, that's probably a pretty decent chunk of change for you. Maybe it's a new part for your home GPU machine, something like that. So the more of those things you have out there, the more things that feel natural and just layered and organic on top of the things that you already do on a day-to-day basis, the more you stack these up, the more momentum you're going to build up over time. But you just have to start, and you just have to start putting stuff out there.
Yeah. And I think one really important thing to say, you sort of mentioned it, is that, it's just stuff that you organically are already telling people about. And it's not like you're like, oh, you have to buy this thing because then I'm going to get some like money on the side for it. It's all about like trust and things like that. So you have to, I know that I do this, like really think about like what I'm recommending, on my website and things like that. And it's only ever stuff that I use myself, really. So I think that's a really important point.
Right. Yeah. And if anyone who's obviously listening to this, they're familiar with you. And if you just break down what Haley's doing, right, there's a community on Facebook, which is free, right? But she's building a community around there because she's putting lots of value into that community. From there, she's also building a podcast, right? So the podcast, she's bringing interesting guests on, which is giving her access to people who may not have talked to her unless she had a podcast, right? So now she's getting access and growing her network and growing her reach. Once the podcast has a lot of traction, then you just line up sponsors for the podcast because they want to talk to your audience. And also, I could see inside the group and on your website, now you're selling products. And it just makes sense because you started very small with I'm sure no expectation to make a whole lot of money on that, but you're just starting to stack and layer those things up. And eventually that just builds momentum, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the important thing for me doing all of these things is the fact that it actually helps people. And that I get a lot of
Absolutely.
emails all the time and messages saying, like, thank you so much. I listened to the podcast, things like that. And I just find that like just helps me continue. And then obviously, like you were saying, having these other small revenue streams starting to come in, that helps me do more podcasts and it helps me make more things to help more
Hmm.
people. And I think that that's a really important thing to mention because, without those new products and things like that, and I think, the freelance contract bundle is like a
Hmm.
product that I'm selling. Like, I feel like it's really, really, really awesome and really, really good. And I want it to be out there, but also helps me continue doing things like this. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could see you continue to build up that expertise and that visibility within the industry. And, I wanted to say too, in terms of audience building, I'm sure there's 10 or 20 other groups or people like you, right, who's making content for the motion community. We'll use an extreme example, right? The Brograph guys, right? They're two dudes. They bro out and they share all the stuff about motion design that they know, right? But I'm sure there's a good chunk of female motion designers who don't resonate with that stuff or don't resonate with that culture. They're super nice guys. I love them,
Yeah,
and
they
you,
are.
you know what I mean. But they're different flavors, right? And it's similar information, similar guests, but people tune in to you because they resonate with how you're saying it and they trust you over time. Like the more and more you build this trust because you're delivering value constantly and you're not looking for a transactional relationship with your audience, you're just giving, giving, giving. That's where you start to build up that momentum and start building an audience that you can connect with. And that will be powerful for you in the future as you start to leverage that over time.
Yeah. So, if there's one piece of advice that you'd like the audience to take away from this, what would it be?
I think the biggest thing is just start and start small. If you can do something today, just teach one person what it is that you know. If you're brave enough, turn on the camera, go on your Instagram stories and teach something that you have thought of this week or something that you learned this week or something that you're doing on your day job. If you're doing a character animation and you have a very quick trick for how to make the character have this nice secondary animation or bounce on there, turn the camera on that, show them how you did it, and try and teach them in the steps that you're doing it. It will challenge you to become a teacher, to master your craft because you understand the steps. You're delivering value to somebody else because there are other people who are behind you or don't know these things. And then you'll start to develop a connection with your audience. So start today. It's so easy. Trust me, you'll start to see some very interesting returns on that and some very interesting engagement. And getting somebody to say, thank you, that was so helpful, is infinitely more rewarding than a client saying, okay, you got this job. Connecting with people, the more and more that grows, like that's a lot more gratifying than any dollar that you can get.
Yeah, and I think it's really awesome that everyone's like helping each other in the industry and things like that as well. And I really, really enjoy that aspect of it.
Absolutely.
So, where can the audience find you and what you do?
So if they want to learn more about me, you can go to matthewencina.com and follow me on most of the social platforms at Matthew Encina. And if you want to learn more about the future, you can go to thefuture.com. And you could also go onto YouTube and look at The Future is Here. So that's our handle for all social across Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And we also just launched a brand new channel today called The Future Academy. We don't have our unique URL yet, but that's a brand new channel that we launched. And what we've focused on there is to teach more design fundamentals, creative fundamentals. We've realized our audience has been split. We're focusing so much on mindset, business, and money on the primary channel that we feel like it just makes sense to start the second channel. So we started a second channel called The Future Academy, and that's where all of our fundamentals, tips, like all that stuff about content creation, about designing, typography, all that stuff is going to be hosted there now. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Cool. Well, we'll put all the links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Haley. And hopefully people got some stuff out of this. And I'd love to connect with you and learn more about all of you guys.
Well, that was an awesome episode. Thanks so much for Matthew for coming on the show and teaching us all about content and how to make it work in the motion design industry. I really appreciate that. And even if you don't want to teach people and you don't want to get into making content for your business, I think it's just really, really nice to turn on the Instagram stories and, get a bit of personality out there on your feed and things like that. I think there was some awesome tips in there. If you enjoyed this episode, please do leave us a rating and review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can always let us know what you thought of the episode. We are at Motion Hatch on Twitter and Instagram. I always love hearing from everyone. I hope you all have a great week. See ya.